Imagine losing your home at age 9, moving between 12 different apartments in a single year, watching your mother struggle to put food on the table, feeling ashamed when other kids asked where you lived. LeBron James lived this reality, and when he was drafted to the NBA in 2003, he said something to his mother that she never forgot, a promise that would explain every controversial decision in his career. Because what the world saw as betrayal, abandonment, or ego, LeBron saw as keeping his word to the woman who gave him everything when she had nothing. Before moving on to the video, I kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel. I would be very happy if you don't refuse my request. Thank you in advance. Enjoy watching. December 1993, Akron, Ohio. LeBron James was 9 years old. Gloria James sat on the edge of a worn-out mattress in their tiny apartment on Hickory Street, holding an eviction notice with trembling hands. It was the fourth one that year. Each time they received one, Gloria would tell herself she'd figure something out, find a way to make it work. But this time felt different. The landlord had given them 72 hours to leave, 72 hours to pack up their meager belongings and find anywhere to go. LeBron stood in the doorway of their single bedroom, his small frame barely filling the space, watching his mother cry. He'd seen her cry before when bills couldn't be paid, when the electricity was shut off, when there wasn't enough food. But this was different. This was the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep, somewhere primal, the kind that made her whole body shake uncontrollably. "We're going to be okay, baby," Gloria said, desperately trying to smile through tears that wouldn't stop falling. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. But LeBron was old enough to know that wasn't true. They weren't okay. They hadn't been okay for a long time. Maybe they'd never been okay. LeBron's father had never been in the picture, had never even tried to be a part of his life. Gloria had him when she was just 16 years old, still a child herself, still trying to figure out how to be a person, let alone a mother. Her own mother, LeBron's grandmother Freda, had died of a sudden heart attack when Gloria was young, leaving her without the family support system that most teenage mothers desperately need to survive. She worked whatever jobs she could find, gas stations where she'd work overnight shifts, diners where she'd serve coffee and eggs to people who barely looked at her, cleaning houses for wealthy families who treated her like she was invisible. But nothing was ever stable, nothing was ever enough. And in Akron, Ohio, in the early 1990s, opportunities for a young single black mother without a high school diploma were almost non-existent. The city was struggling economically, jobs were scarce, and discrimination was real even if nobody wanted to talk about it. That December night in 1993, they packed everything they owned into 2 large garbage bags, clothes, a few toys, some photographs, LeBron's schoolbooks. That was it. That was their entire life. LeBron carried one bag that was almost as big as he was. Gloria carried the other and held his hand tightly as they walked through the cold Akron streets, their breath visible in the freezing air like small clouds, looking for anywhere to sleep that night. The temperature was dropping, snow was beginning to fall, and they had nowhere to go. They stayed with Gloria's friend Wanda for a week, sleeping on a couch in a living room that smelled like cigarettes and desperation. Then Wanda's boyfriend came back from jail, and suddenly there wasn't room for them anymore. They had to leave with barely any notice, packing those same garbage bags in the middle of the night. They stayed with another friend, Sharon, for 2 weeks until an argument about money. Gloria couldn't contribute enough for food, ended that arrangement abruptly. They stayed in a homeless shelter for a few nights, but Gloria hated the way the other residents looked at LeBron, the way some of the men watched him with eyes that made her skin crawl, the way the place smelled like urine and hopelessness, so they left after just 3 days. By the end of that year, 9-year-old LeBron James had lived in 12 different places, 12 different beds, or couches, or floors, 12 different addresses that he had to memorize for school forms, knowing he'd have a different one next week. 12 different explanations when kids at school asked him where he lived, each lie getting easier to tell but harder to believe. But here's what nobody talks about when they tell LeBron's rags to riches story. Here's the part that shaped everything that came after, the part that explains every decision he'd make decades later. One night in early 1994, they were staying with one of Gloria's friends, Tanisha, in a particularly rough neighborhood on the south side of Akron. The house was small, dirty, and felt dangerous. LeBron was lying on a couch that smelled like stale cigarettes and spilled beer, trying desperately to sleep while adults in the kitchen argued loudly about money, about drugs, about things a 9-year-old shouldn't have to hear. He could hear his mother's voice too, tired and defeated, trying to keep the peace. And as he lay there in the darkness of that unfamiliar living room, listening to sirens in the distance and footsteps on the street outside, LeBron James made a promise to himself. A promise he wouldn't speak out loud for almost a decade. A promise that would shape his entire life. "I'm going to make it," he whispered into the darkness, so quietly that nobody could hear him. "I'm going to be somebody. And Mom is never going to cry like this again. Never." Wait, because what happened next changed LeBron's entire trajectory. And it explains why basketball became more than just a game to him. It became a lifeline, a weapon, a way out. January 1994. Frank Walker's house. Frank Walker was a local youth football coach who'd noticed LeBron's natural athleticism during a community center recreation program. The kid was only 9, but moved like someone much older, with coordination and body control that seemed almost supernatural. More importantly, Frank had noticed something else that troubled him deeply. LeBron missed practice constantly. Not because he didn't want to be there. Frank could see the disappointment in the kid's eyes every time he had to miss a session, but because LeBron and Gloria had nowhere stable to live. Some nights LeBron didn't even know what neighborhood he'd be sleeping in, didn't know if he'd be close enough to make it to practice, or if he'd even have transportation. Frank made Gloria an offer that would fundamentally change LeBron's life forever. "Let him stay with me and my family during the week," Frank said one evening after practice, pulling Gloria aside while LeBron shot baskets by himself on the outdoor court. "He can go to school from our house, play sports, have a routine and stability. You can see him on weekends, whenever you want, just until you get back on your feet, Gloria, just until things get better." Gloria cried when Frank made the offer, right there in the parking lot. But these were different tears than the ones LeBron had seen before. These were tears of relief, mixed with profound shame. Relief that her son would have stability and safety, shame that she couldn't provide it herself, shame that she had to accept help, shame that she'd somehow failed as a mother, relief that someone cared enough to help, shame that she needed that help so desperately. LeBron moved in with the Walkers, and for the first time in his life, he experienced something he'd never had: stability. He had his own bed that was his every single night, his own drawer for clothes that wouldn't have to be packed into a garbage bag tomorrow, a house where he knew with certainty he'd be sleeping that night, and the next night, and the night after that. The Walkers had structure and routines, dinner at the same time every evening, around a table where everyone talked about their day, homework before TV, lights out at a reasonable hour. They introduced him to basketball more seriously, seeing how the sport could channel his energy, his anger, his fear, and his athleticism in positive ways. But every Sunday, without fail, no matter what else was happening, LeBron would ask the same question: "Can I see my mum today?" Frank Walker later recalled those Sundays in interviews he gave years later, after LeBron became famous. He never blamed her for the situation, never was angry at her for not being able to provide. He just missed her, and you could see it in his eyes, this fierce determination that someday, somehow, he was going to make everything better for her. It wasn't a kid's fantasy, it was a vow. Gloria would visit when she could, which was almost every Sunday. She'd show up at LeBron's games, sometimes disheveled from working double shifts at 2 different jobs, sometimes with clothes that didn't quite fit right, or shoes that were falling apart at the seams. Other parents would whisper when she arrived. LeBron could hear them, even from the court, could feel their judgment like knives in his back, could sense their superiority, their pity mixed with contempt. And every single time he heard those whispers or saw those looks, something hardened inside him. Every whisper, every sidelong glance at his mother, every moment of shame, he stored it all away, let it fuel something growing inside him, something that would eventually make him unstoppable. During one of those Sunday visits, probably in late 1994 or early 1995, Gloria and LeBron sat on the Walkers' front porch while the Walkers gave them privacy. It was just the two of them. LeBron was 10 now, shooting up in height, his body already showing signs of the physical gifts that would eventually make him hundreds of millions of dollars. "I'm sorry, baby," Gloria said, staring at her hands instead of looking at him. "I'm so sorry you had to leave me. I'm sorry I can't give you what you need. I'm sorry I'm not a better mother." "Mom, stop," LeBron interrupted, his voice firmer than a 10-year-old's should be. And then he said something that Gloria James has never forgotten, something she finally revealed in a little-noticed 2020 interview with a small Cleveland newspaper. "I'm going to make it. I'm going to be somebody important. And when I do, you'll never have to worry about anything ever again. No more evictions. No more sleeping in other people's houses. No more crying because you can't pay rent. No more people looking at you like you're less than them. I promise you, Mom." He was 10 years old, making a promise that would have seemed absurdly impossible to anyone listening. But Gloria saw something in her son's eyes that day, a certainty that scared her a little, because it was too intense for a child. Because it wasn't a child's fantasy or dream. It was a vow made with full understanding of what it meant. "You just focus on school and being a kid," Gloria told him, trying to lighten the mood. "You don't need to worry about me. I'm serious, Mom. I promise you. Everything I do from now on, every single thing, it's going to be for us. For both of us. Everything I do, it's going to be for us." Remember those words. Write them down. Burn them into your memory, because they explain everything that came after. Every controversial decision, every move that seemed selfish or calculated, every choice that fans couldn't understand. It all traces back to those words. But what nobody knew, What Gloria didn't even fully understand at the time was that this promise came with a dark side, a pressure that would eventually break something inside LeBron, a weight that no child should carry but that he carried anyway. LeBron stayed with the Walkers for about 2 years, though he saw Gloria regularly. During that time, basketball became his obsession, not just because he was naturally gifted, though he was, even then, not just because it was fun, though it was that too, but because every time he picked up a basketball, every time he practiced, every time he got better, he saw it as one step closer to keeping his promise to his mother. By the time LeBron entered St. Vincent St. Mary High School in 1999, he was already a phenomenon, a freshman making varsity, a kid who played like he had something to prove to the entire world, because he did. Gloria had managed to stabilize somewhat by then. She had found a small apartment in Akron. Nothing fancy, but it was theirs. She worked multiple jobs to keep it, and she never missed LeBron's games. She'd sit in the stands, often one of the loudest voices in the gym, cheering for her son. Other parents still whispered about her sometimes, still judged her past, her struggles. LeBron heard every word. "You see that?" LeBron said once to a teammate after a game where he'd scored 40 points. He was pointing at Gloria, who was waiting by the door, beaming with pride. "That's why I play. Everything I do is for her." His teammate thought it was sweet. He didn't understand it was a weight. As LeBron's fame grew, as Sports Illustrated put him on the cover when he was still in high school, as scouts from every major college came to tiny Akron to watch him play, as people started whispering about him being the next Michael Jordan, the pressure of that childhood promise grew with it. Because LeBron had made a vow, not just to be successful, but to make sure his mother never struggled again. And in his mind, that meant more than just making it to the NBA. It meant being great. It meant being the best. It meant making decisions that would secure not just his future, but hers. Hold on. Because what happened in 2003 revealed just how seriously LeBron took that promise. June 26, 2003, Madison Square Garden, New York City. NBA Draft. LeBron James was selected first overall by the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was the most anticipated draft pick in years. The entire basketball world was watching this 18-year-old kid from Akron, Ohio, who was supposed to save a franchise, save a city, maybe save the entire NBA. But when LeBron walked across that stage to shake David Stern's hand, to hold up that Cavaliers jersey with his name and number 23 on it, he wasn't thinking about Cleveland. He wasn't thinking about the pressure or the expectations or the comparisons to Michael Jordan. He was thinking about his mother, sitting in the audience, crying. After the draft, after the photos and interviews and chaos, LeBron went back to his hotel room. Gloria was there. And according to a close family friend who was present that night, LeBron did something that perfectly captured everything about their relationship. He took out the paperwork for his first Nike contract, a $90 million deal that had been negotiated before he'd even played a single NBA game, and he showed it to Gloria. "Remember what I told you when I was 10, he said, on Frank Walker's porch. Gloria nodded, tears already forming. "I kept my promise, Mom. You're never going to struggle again. Everything I have, everything I make, everything I do, it's for us. It's always been for us." And then LeBron did something that's been reported a few times but never fully understood. He had his financial advisors set up accounts and investments specifically to ensure Gloria would be taken care of for life. Not just comfortable, generationally wealthy. He bought her a house. Then he bought her a better house. He made sure she had everything she'd never had when he was a child. Security, stability, comfort, dignity. But here's what people don't understand about the decision. Here's what explains every controversial decision LeBron would make in his career. That promise to his mother. It wasn't just about money or success. It was about never being powerless again. It was about never letting anyone make him or his family feel small ever again. It was about control, and that need for control, born from years of having no control over where he slept or whether there would be food on the table, would lead directly to the most criticized moment of his career, and that need for control would lead to the decision. Fast forward to 2010, LeBron had spent 7 years in Cleveland, 7 years trying to win a championship for his home state, for the city that drafted him, for the fans who'd supported him since high school, 7 years of carrying teams that weren't quite good enough, weren't quite talented enough around him, 7 years of increasing frustration as he watched other superstars win championships while he came up short again and again. But the real story of why LeBron left Cleveland isn't what most people think. It's not about wanting an easier path to a championship. It's not about his ego, or not being able to handle pressure. It's about something that happened in the months leading up to his decision, that's never been fully reported. In the months leading up to his free agency in the summer of 2010, Gloria and LeBron had several private conversations. These conversations have never been fully reported by mainstream media, but people close to the family know they happened, and know what was discussed. Gloria could see the weight her son was carrying, could see it in his eyes, and in the way his shoulders slumped when he thought nobody was watching. The pressure to win a championship for Cleveland wasn't just basketball pressure, it was personal. It was about proving to his hometown that the kid who'd been homeless was worthy of their love. It was about validation. The criticism every time they fell short in the playoffs wasn't just sports criticism to LeBron, it was personal rejection. "Baby, you don't owe these people anything," Gloria told him during one of these conversations in April 2010, according to a family friend who was present. They were sitting in LeBron's Cleveland home, the enormous mansion that was so far removed from those apartments they'd been evicted from, yet somehow the ghosts of those apartments still haunted both of them. "You've given them everything. You brought excitement to that city. You brought hope. You brought attention and money and pride. If they can't appreciate that, if they're going to blame you for not having enough help around you, then maybe it's time to think about what's best for you. Not for them, for you." But LeBron was torn, deeply conflicted, because leaving Cleveland meant going back on another kind of promise, an implied promise to the city that drafted him, to the fans who supported him, to the place that was close to his Akron roots. It meant admitting that he couldn't do it alone, couldn't bring a championship to Ohio by himself. And for someone whose entire identity was built on keeping promises and never giving up, that felt like failure. Then something happened that made the decision easier, though LeBron has never spoken about it publicly and probably never will. In May 2010, about 2 months before the decision would air on ESPN and change everything, someone spray-painted graffiti on the house LeBron had bought for Gloria in Bath Township, just outside Akron. The words were hateful, racist, and are too offensive to repeat here in full, but they were essentially blaming Gloria for LeBron's playoff failures, calling her terrible names, suggesting she was the reason LeBron might leave, attacking her as a mother and as a person. The hatred was personal and vicious. Gloria didn't tell LeBron about it initially. She had it cleaned up quietly, quickly, before he could see it. She didn't want to add to his stress, didn't want to influence his decision about his career. But he found out anyway. A neighbor mentioned it casually, not realizing LeBron didn't know. And according to people who know him well, people who were around him during that time, that was the precise moment LeBron James decided he was leaving Cleveland. Because remember the promise, everything I do is for us. And if staying in Cleveland meant his mother would be targeted, would be disrespected and attacked, would be made to feel the same shame she felt when he was 9 years old and they were homeless and people looked down on them, then staying wasn't an option. It didn't matter what the city wanted. It didn't matter what fans expected. His promise was to his mother, not to Cleveland. Wait, because the decision wasn't just about basketball or championships. It was about a son protecting his mother from people who'd crossed a line. July 8, 2010. The decision aired on ESPN. The whole world knows what happened next. In front of millions of viewers, in a television special that raised money for charity, but would become one of the most controversial moments in sports history, LeBron announced he was taking his talents to South Beach to join the Miami Heat. The backlash was immediate, intense, and brutal. Cleveland fans burned his jersey in the streets. Dan Gilbert, the Cavaliers owner, wrote a scathing open letter calling LeBron's decision a cowardly betrayal, promising that Cleveland would win a championship before LeBron did. Sports analysts across the country called him a quitter, a choker, someone who couldn't handle the pressure of being the man, someone who needed to join other superstars because he wasn't good enough to win on his own. But backstage at the Boys and Girls Club in Greenwich, Connecticut, just minutes before LeBron went on camera to announce his decision, he was on the phone with Gloria one final time. "You sure about this?" she asked him, her voice heavy with concern. She knew what was coming, knew the hatred that would follow. "I'm sure, Mom. This is what I need to do. For me, for my career, for you, for our family. They're going to hate you for this, baby. They're going to say terrible things. I know. But I kept my promise to you. That's what matters most. I protected you. I made sure you're safe and taken care of. That's what I promised when I was 10 years old. Everything else is just noise." What Gloria meant, and what LeBron understood perfectly, was that this decision would cost him something significant and lasting: his reputation, his relationship with his home state, the narrative of being the loyal hometown hero who never left, his image as the good guy. But LeBron had learned something fundamental from his childhood, something that those years of homelessness had taught him. Loyalty has to go both ways. And when people spray-painted hateful messages about his mother on her house, when they attacked her personally for his basketball failures, that was Cleveland breaking loyalty first. The thing is, LeBron couldn't say any of this publicly, couldn't tell the world about the graffiti, or the specific incidents of disrespect toward his mother, because that would seem like he was making excuses for his decision, would invite even more scrutiny and criticism and hatred toward Gloria, would make her a target again. So he took all the hate himself, let the world think he was arrogant, disloyal, weak, unable to win the big one. Let them burn his jersey and write hateful letters and create memes mocking him. because protecting his mother, keeping his promise to her, was more important than his public image. In Miami, LeBron won his first 2 championships in 2012 and 2013. He proved he could win at the highest level. He silenced some critics, but something was still missing, and Gloria could see it. "You're not happy," she told him in the summer of 2014. They were sitting by the pool at LeBron's Miami house. He'd just won his 2nd straight championship. He should have been on top of the world. "I'm fine, Mom." "No, you're not. You proved you can win. You got the rings. But you still feel like you have something to prove." She was right. Because winning in Miami didn't complete the promise. The promise wasn't just about being successful. It was about doing it the right way. It was about dignity. And LeBron had started to feel that leaving Cleveland the way he did, regardless of the reasons, had cost him something he needed to get back. So he went back to Cleveland in 2014. And when he published his letter in Sports Illustrated announcing his return, one paragraph stood out. "I'm not promising a championship. I know how hard that is to deliver. We're not ready right now. No way. Of course I want to win next year, but I'm realistic. It will be a long process, much longer than it was in 2010. My patience will get tested. I know that. I'm going into a situation with a young team and a new coach. I will be the old head." But what he didn't write was the conversation he'd had with Gloria before making that decision. "Are you going back because you think you have to?" she'd asked him. "No. I'm going back because I want to finish what I started. I want to show those people that I didn't give up on them. I want to prove I can bring a championship to Ohio, to the place where you raised me, where we struggled together, where we survived together. Baby, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. I have to prove it to myself, Mom. I have to show that kid who was homeless in Akron, who promised his mother he'd make everything okay. I have to show him that we did it the right way. And that's why 2016 means so much more than people realize." June 19, 2016. Oracle Arena, Oakland. Game 7 of the NBA Finals. LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers were facing the Golden State Warriors, who'd won 73 games in the regular season. Cleveland was down 3-1 in the series. No team in NBA Finals history had ever come back from that deficit. The pressure was immense, but the night before Game 7, something happened in LeBron's hotel room that's never been fully reported. Gloria flew to Oakland specifically for that game. She wasn't going to miss it. And the night before, she went to LeBron's room. Kyrie Irving and coach Tyronn Lue have both vaguely referenced that there was an emotional moment before Game 7, but they've never explained what it was. According to someone close to the situation, Gloria reminded LeBron of that promise from 1994, the one he made on Frank Walker's porch when he was 10 years old. "You already kept your promise to me, baby," she told him. "I have everything I need. You gave me more than I ever dreamed. You don't have to win tomorrow for me." And LeBron started crying. Because for 22 years, since he was 10 years old, everything he'd done had been about keeping that promise. Every practice, every game, every decision, every sacrifice. It had all been about making sure his mother never struggled again, never felt powerless again, never felt ashamed again. "I'm not doing this for you, Mom," he said through tears. "I'm doing it for that 9-year-old kid who had to watch you cry because we were getting evicted. I'm doing it for that kid who felt ashamed when other kids made fun of where we lived. I'm doing it for every time someone disrespected you. This isn't about basketball. This is about showing that we matter, that we're not powerless, that we can overcome anything." The next night, LeBron James played one of the greatest games of his career. The block on Andre Iguodala, the assists, the leadership, the emotional intensity. Cleveland won 93-89. LeBron fell to the floor in tears when the buzzer sounded, and the first person he looked for in the crowd was Gloria. When they embraced after the game, LeBron whispered something to her that arena microphones barely caught. "We did it, Mom. We kept the promise." The world thought he meant winning a championship for Cleveland, but he meant something deeper, proving that a homeless kid from Akron and his teenage single mother could overcome everything the world threw at them and come out on top. But the story doesn't end there, because the promise shaped one more massive decision. In 2018, LeBron left Cleveland again, this time to join the Los Angeles Lakers. The backlash was less intense than 2010, but people still questioned it. Why leave after bringing Cleveland a championship? Why go to Los Angeles? Why the Lakers? The public explanations were about LeBron's family wanting to live in LA, about business opportunities, about Hollywood and entertainment, and those things were true, but they weren't the whole truth. The real reason, according to people close to the James family, was about Gloria and that original promise. By 2018, Gloria James was 51 years old. She'd spent the first 30-plus years of her life struggling, surviving, fighting to keep herself and her son afloat. Now she was wealthy beyond her wildest imagination, secure, comfortable, but LeBron could see something in her that worried him. She was tired, not physically, emotionally. The spotlight that came with being LeBron James's mother, the scrutiny, the judgment, the constant public attention, it wore on her. Every time LeBron was criticized, Gloria felt it too. Every time someone questioned LeBron's decisions or loyalty or leadership, she internalized it. In Cleveland, that pressure was intense. The city's expectations, the constant media presence, the weight of being the hometown hero's mother. and LeBron knew that if he stayed in Cleveland for the rest of his career, Gloria would never truly be able to relax, would always feel that pressure. Los Angeles offered something different: anonymity, in a city full of celebrities and famous people, space to breathe, a place where Gloria could just be Gloria, not LeBron's mum every single day. According to a source close to the family, LeBron and Gloria had a conversation about this in the spring of 2018, a few weeks before he announced his decision to go to the Lakers. "Mom, do you like living in Ohio?" he asked her directly. "It's home, baby. It's where you're from." "That's not what I asked. Do you like living there? Are you happy?" Gloria was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes I still see the places where we struggled, drive past the old apartments, remember what it felt like to be powerless. And as much as we've overcome all that, those memories don't go away. What if we went somewhere new, started fresh, somewhere you could just be you, not my mother, not part of my career, just Gloria?" And that was a huge part of why LeBron chose Los Angeles, not just for himself, not just for basketball reasons or business opportunities, but to give his mother the fresh start she never really got. To complete that promise, from 1994, in a way he hadn't even realized needed completing. When LeBron announced his decision to join the Lakers, he posted on Instagram, "Thank you Northeast Ohio for an incredible 4 seasons. This will always be home." But privately, he told Gloria, "We kept the promise, and now we get to write the next chapter together, on our terms." Since moving to Los Angeles, Gloria James has maintained a much lower profile than she did in Cleveland or Miami. She lives comfortably, does charity work, and by all accounts, seems happier and more at peace than she's been in years. And LeBron, he won another championship with the Lakers in 2020. He's cemented his legacy as one of the greatest players in NBA history. He's built business empires and become a billionaire. He's achieved everything that 10-year-old kid on Frank Walker's porch dreamed about and more. But here's what makes this story important. Here's why it matters. Every time people criticize LeBron for the decision, for leaving Cleveland the first time, for going to Miami, for coming back to Cleveland, for leaving again, they were judging someone based on incomplete information. They saw disloyalty, they saw arrogance, they saw a superstar chasing rings or money or fame. They didn't see a son keeping a promise to his mother. They didn't see a kid who'd been homeless at 9 deciding he'd never be powerless again. They didn't see a man whose every major life decision was filtered through the lens of, does this honor the promise I made to the woman who gave me everything when she had nothing? That's the real story of LeBron James's career. Not the championships or statistics or endorsement deals, but the through line of a promise made by a child to his struggling mother, and how that promise shaped every controversial choice he made. In 2020, during a rare in-depth interview, Gloria James was asked what she was most proud of regarding LeBron's career. Most people expected her to say the championships or his business success or his philanthropy. Instead, she said, "I'm most proud that he's never forgotten where he came from, that despite all the success and all the money and all the fame, he still remembers what it felt like when we had nothing. And he's never let that make him bitter, he's let it make him better. He kept his promise to me, but more importantly, he kept his promise to himself, to never let another kid feel the way he felt when we were struggling." And that's the real legacy. Not just what LeBron accomplished for himself, but what he's done for others who've experienced similar struggles. The I Promise school he opened in Akron, specifically designed to help at-risk kids from situations like his own childhood. The housing initiatives for families facing eviction. The scholarships and programs targeting single-parent households. Every one of those initiatives traces back to that night in December 1993, when a 9-year-old boy watched his mother cry over an eviction notice. To that promise made on Frank Walker's porch in 1994. To that vow, "Everything I do is for us." People often wonder what drives LeBron James, what makes him so competitive, so determined, so seemingly impossible to satisfy even with all his success. The answer isn't complicated. It's a promise he made to his mother when he was 10 years old. A promise he's spent his entire life keeping. And every decision, from the decision to the return to Cleveland to the move to Los Angeles, has been about honoring that promise in different ways. Sometimes it meant pursuing championships to prove they weren't powerless. Sometimes it meant choosing his mother's peace of mind over public perception. Sometimes it meant going back to fix things that felt unfinished. But it was always, always about the promise. Everything I do is for us. Today, LeBron James is approaching 40 years old. He's won 4 championships. He's one of the greatest basketball players who's ever lived. He's a billionaire businessman. He's a global icon. But if you ask him what his greatest accomplishment is, people close to him say he'd point to his mother, comfortable, secure, at peace, and say, "I kept my promise." Because for LeBron James, that's what all of this has always been about. Not the fame or the fortune or the legacy, though those came along the way. It's been about proving to that 9-year-old homeless kid in Akron, and to the teenage mother who raised him against impossible odds, that they mattered, that they could overcome anything, that a promise made on a front porch in 1994 could shape a Hall of Fame career and change millions of lives. That's the real story of LeBron James. The story of a son's promise to his mother, and how that promise explains everything. Everything I do is for us. He meant it then. He means it now, and understanding that promise is the key to understanding every controversial, celebrated, or criticized decision in one of basketball's greatest careers.